What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today we're talking cheap forward options in Fantasy Premier League, going through a lot of the 6.5 million or less forwards. Just as a little disclaimer for this video, sorry to keep saying this, but I am recording these videos in advance to make sure I get them out on the channel while I'm away. So hopefully there's no big injury or transfer news that makes what I say irrelevant. I'll try and keep it as relevant as possible. Otherwise, let's just jump straight into it after I take a quick word about our sponsors for this video. Really pleased to say this video has been sponsored by fantasyfootballscout.co.uk, one of the best fantasy football sites out there. I've been using it for years. If you want to check it out, click the link in the description below. Their members area offers tons of content. You've got fixture tickers, player comparison tools. You can create custom tables to check out player stats. You've got a rate my team function and loads more. So if you want to check it out, and I highly recommend you do, you won't regret it. The link is in the description below. So we'll talk about Jota first. There's quite a bit of love for him. Obviously, at the end of last season, he did really well. Spoken about it before, but when Wolves did make that switch to 3-5-2, he really did shine. Took a little bit of a time to get going, and when they were playing in their previous formation, wasn't quite as good. But when he got to 3-5-2, he kind of matched Jimenez and did really well. And obviously, he comes in this season a full million less than Jimenez. Now, got 4.2 points per match, which I think is the second best on this list. Now, one thing to take into account is he probably will score less points this year because obviously he's a forward now, so he doesn't get the bonus point for a clean sheet, doesn't get an extra point for a goal. That being said, he only played 2,352 minutes. I would expect if he can stay injury-free to that increase, and if they stick to the formation, he does as well as he did in the second half of last season, then that should improve anyway. So although he's a forward and he will get less points for goals and clean sheets, I think there's other ways he's definitely going to make it up. So his expected goals was 7.88 for the entire season. 9 goals, 8 assists, 17 attacking returns is decent for 6.5 million. I think if you're going to go for a Wolves striker, and we're not really yet to see Jimenez in pre-season, I just think for the million saving, I think it's got to be Jota. I don't think Jimenez is going to offer enough straight away to make it worth going for him for a million more. The question is, should you go for Wolves? Leicester away, Man United at home, Burnley at home, and Everton away. It's a tricky start to the season, but we've seen them do well against the top clubs before. So I don't think it's the worst punt, and I don't even think it's a punt. I don't think it's the worst pick to go for a Wolves striker from the off, and I do think Jota is slightly better. Looking at the players on the list as well, he was second for expected goals out of everyone we're going to talk about, and second for expected assists as well. So overall was pretty good versus the rest, and did have only 2,300 minutes. So I'm expecting him to improve. And as I've said in other videos, from the last kind of 20 games when they made that switch to 3-5-2, when he was back fighting fit, and good to play, he pretty much matched Jimenez for expected goals and slightly beat him for expected assists as well. So he doesn't necessarily shoot as much in the box as Jimenez, but he's right up there for quality chances. So I do like Jota, and I'm coming around to picking them even though the fixtures are tough, but we'll see once I get to game week 1. Let's cut straight to the chase with King. I think one of the reasons we're all eyeing him up, apart from the fact he's in a good team and he is a good player, is those fixtures. Sheffield United at home and Aston Villa away to start off the season. It doesn't get much better than that. And they're probably two of the teams that you'd want to target straight away from the off. Yes, they could do really well, but at this point, we've only really got pre-season form and last season form to go on, so we've got to target the fixtures, I think. So Sheffield United at home and Aston Villa away looks really good. When he is fit, he tends to get really good minutes, 2,963 last year. Expected goals is 7.55. Actually came in with 12 goals. Would have been nicer if he got a few more assists, but got 4 points per match. Which is only 0.2 less than Jota, who we just spoke about. Obviously, he was a forward all year, so wasn't getting those clean sheet points and bonus points for the goal as well. So pretty good to come in at 4 points per game. He also plays in a team that was 7th for expected goals last year. So Bournemouth are an attacking team, and they do create good chances. Wilson looks to be the main man. His stats were better than King across the board last year, but obviously you pay 1.5 million for him. So I think King, almost simply because of the fixtures, you can talk yourself into going for him. If one of the other 6.5 million forwards that you're looking at or that I talk about really stands out to you, then obviously absolutely go for them. If you're not sure, but you've set out your team structure to have a 6.5 million forward, and that's a fine thing to do. I like doing that with my team, that even this far out from game week 1, yes, I don't know the exact player I want, but I know the structure I want. So if I've got a 6.5 million slot, I don't think you can get much worse than King because of those fixtures. And if he's no good after there, when he gets Man City at home, you can switch him out to one of the others, whoever's doing well, whoever has the good fixtures at that point. Looking at some other stats, he had the most shots out of everyone we're going to talk about on the list and the most penalty area touches as well. So definitely remember FPL is not a set and forget game. You don't have to create a team in game week 1 and then go for it the whole season. So I do think targeting the fixtures is a good option, and then switching to a different 6.5 later on could be the way to go. If you do want to target fixtures and you want to look a little bit further ahead than just the first 2, then DFA might be your man. Brighton at home to start the season is brilliant. Then Everton away, which is a little bit tougher, and West Ham at home, Newcastle away is pretty good. We've already spoken about Newcastle in other videos, not necessarily looking like the best team this year. A lot of people tipping them for relegation, so that could be, even though it's an away game, with decent fixtures. So I had a quick look at Watford last year. They did start pretty quickly. They won the first 4 games, and I think ultimately they have got a pretty decent squad at Watford. There's not too many glaring holes there. Kapui in midfield is decent enough, as well as Decore as well. And obviously you've got DNA and DFO who partnered him up front last year. So he was 4.4 points per match, which is the highest of any of the 6.5 million forwards, not only on the list, but out of all of them that are available in FPL. Again, a bit like Jota, obviously you've got to take into account that he was a midfielder last year, but did only play 2,000 minutes. So if he's fighting fit or fully fit, then he should play more minutes this year, I think. I think he did really well once he was partnered up front. And he adds a bit of flair, a bit of creativity up front. Obviously, they got Deeney. He's more of a kind of target man, hold the ball up, lots of strength, can finish, of course, as well, and on penalties. So could be worth considering for the same price. But I just think DFO just adds that bit more to Watford's team. So I would expect him to play the majority of games. So really good opening fixtures. He is a player that in the past I have kind of, he blows hot and cold. He does really well, then doesn't do well for a while. And we did see him get a lot of his FPL points against kind of weaker teams last year, which isn't necessarily a problem. But when you're scoring kind of 2 or 3 goals in matches and then nothing in the rest, it does get a bit frustrating to own. Obviously, over the course of kind of 4 to 6 games, it doesn't really matter, but you'd want someone you can rely on consistently for good fixtures like these ones, and then maybe you sell him off afterwards. So I like DFA. I think if you're targeting fixtures, he's almost as good as King, maybe even slightly better, because you could hold on to him for a bit longer before you have to get rid of him. I think Watford, there's no reason why they can't start brightly again. So DFA, definitely a good pick if you've got him in your team. 10 goals, 5 assists last year, 15 attacking returns. Definitely something he can improve on if he gets more minutes. So actually Barnes was actually one of the worst points per match on here, 3.3, but stats-wise is pretty decent. Only played 2,400 minutes nearly last year, so hopefully we'll get more. The one thing to worry about is there's potential for Chris Wood to do well as well, and could potentially nick some points off of Barnes. But if you look at stats-wise, he was brilliant. 9.73 expected goals. He barely played a match until like game week 12 or 15. And then absolutely smashed it from expected goals on there. He was right up there with the big boys like Salah, Aubameyang, and players like that, and did really well. 12 goals in the end. Like I've said before, though, in that kind of this video, other videos, it is nice when a player tops up their goals with assists, especially when they're a forward. They don't get the 5 points for a goal like a midfielder does, and they don't get any points for clean sheets. So I think you'd need to bring that creativity up. Burnley, pretty bad for expected goals last year. Not too far ahead of Cardiff and Fulham, who weren't great, especially Cardiff. But he did have 23 big chances himself, which was pretty crazy. So they are creating fairly good chances. But overall, for the whole team, their expected goals wasn't that high. So I don't know if they've added enough quality to that team to improve that this year. Jay Rodriguez has come in. Maybe he'll take minutes off of Wood and Barnes. I'm not quite sure how they're going to line up just yet. And opening fixtures wise, Southampton at home is good, but then it's Arsenal and Wolves away and Liverpool at home. So it doesn't get much worse than that. So with him, he's got Brighton, Norwich and Villa after those opening 4 fixtures. So I think this is a perfect case. Obviously, points per match is a good indicator of how a player's going to do, but we don't have a player for a whole season. We can bring them in, take them out, etc. And obviously, you're trying to target when they're going to score well, and you'd hopefully do that with an easier fixture. So you could go for DFA or King or someone like that for the opening 4, and then switch to Barnes maybe if Burnley are doing okay, and if he's first choice for Brighton, Norwich and Villa. That could be a tactic. I don't think this is one to start with, but don't ignore him for the whole season. So I've put Danny Ings on the list. There are lots of other strikers that could have gone on, but I think on his day, Danny Ings, when he's fully fit, is probably one of the best options out there. And he's only 6 million, so he's slightly cheaper than everyone else on this list. And to be honest, at the start of the season, it was almost up to the point where he was essential last year. But obviously, he did get injured, like we know he has got a problem with doing. And it was at that point that people started getting Jimenez in, and he absolutely smashed it. But up until that point, he was doing really well. 3.8 points per game was better than Barnes. 7 goals, 3 assists in only 1,600 minutes. Was pretty decent. Now, fixtures-wise are not fantastic. Burnley and Brighton are okay, but they're both away. And it's a Liverpool, Man United at home. So it is a tough opening 4. Maybe you'd want to think about doing what I just said for Barnes and going with one of the others and maybe downgrading to him. But on his day, I do think he do really well. The problem is he's obviously injury prone, and yes, we do have transfers, but you don't want to keep wasting them on injury prone players. So it might be worth seeing how they set up. Obviously, Che Adams is there now. Are they both going to play? Is it going to be one of them? Will he maybe be pushed further out wide? I'd assume not, but these are all things we might want to look at in pre-season to see what's going to happen. Hasenhüttl was interesting because he came in, I think, from eye test wise, Southampton definitely looked better under him. They looked more positive, more attacking. But when I looked at the expected goals, they, again, a bit like Burnley, they weren't too far off Cardiff and Fulham. And this was based on game weeks after the new manager came in. So that's a little bit worrying. But obviously, he's got a full pre-season with them now. And I do think eye test-wise, they did look to improve. So hopefully that will help, and obviously Che Adams, hopefully that will help as well. But I do think you're kind of looking for all things to kind of align with him to not be injured, for Southampton to continue that improvement, and for players like Che Adams to come in and do well for them as well. So I think they're probably a wait and see. I do like Danny Ings, and like I said, 0.5 million cheaper than anyone else on the list. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I should probably talk about some other players that are worth mentioning, as well as who I think probably is the best choice out of these guys. So worth mentioning, I think we're still waiting for prices on Batshuayi and Tammy Abraham. Obviously Giroud's coming at 7 million, so slightly more than the players on this list, but I do think Chelsea could be really worth a shot this year. Obviously, they probably are now fighting for fourth spot with Arsenal and Man United. I think City, Liverpool and Spurs will be the top three. But they've still got some quality players, even though they've lost Hazard. So a Chelsea forward at 7 million or less could really, really be good value. So I'm waiting on the price of Batshuayi. He seems to be starting most games in pre-season. And I do think Chelsea's fixtures are okay to open up with. So they're worth a mention as well. I've also not talked about any promoted strikers in this video. I think Timu Pukki is definitely an interesting one. Norwich's fixtures aren't great to open, but he does have a really good goal scoring and assist record over the past 3 seasons, albeit in weaker leagues. So we'll have to see if they can make the step up, whether Norwich can make the step up as well. But he might be worth looking at. Obviously, Jimenez did really well, but there are lots of other examples of when the Championship strikers come up and not done the business. So not quite looking at any of them myself. So in terms of my favourites, I'm kind of looking at King and Jota probably. I do like King's fixtures. DFA, I think the fact that he's got 4 nice fixtures does play into his favour a little bit, so you could go for him and downgrade. But for right now, I've got King in my side. Let's see what happens for Game Week 1. If you did enjoy the video, hit the like button. Much appreciated as always. Subscribe if you're new around here, and leave a comment below. Let me know who your favourite budget strikers are, and I will catch you next time. Cheers all.